Video games in general have become much easier over time as different generations of gamers develop different tastes and preferences from their predecessors. While there are a number of modern games that are as hard as ones from 20 years ago, the more common case will find that difficulty has been reduced across the industry. This means revisiting old PlayStation games, particularly RPGs, can be quite a shock to modern gamers as they see how much higher the difficulty was back in those days. Many gamers love the old school challenge of games like this, while others kind of despise it and want more of a relaxed experience in their games. Hello friends, and welcome back to Game Rant. I'm Casey, and these are 7 of the hardest PlayStation 1 RPGs. Starting our list off, we've got Vagrant Story. Dealing with subjects far different from the normal RPG, especially for its time, Vagrant Story featured a risk-breaker agent being framed for a crime while trying to uncover a secret plot between a cult and a senior member of parliament. Players get to explore the catacombs beneath the ruined city of Le Monde in a beautiful world filled with amazing cutscenes. However, Vagrant Story is known for being much more difficult than many modern RPGs. Players have to think much more strategically about combat throughout the game, and the level of difficulty of many puzzles is surprisingly high. There are also no shops for players to visit. Instead, the game chose to put a huge emphasis on players creating their own weapons and having to keep customizing them during their adventure. At number 6, we've got Persona 1. Gamers nowadays poke some fun at the legendary recent entries in the Persona franchise for being so much easier than the early games. This has never been more true than with Persona 1, a game that provided such a dense number of enemy encounters with such random inconsistency that it became much more difficult than it needed to be, a difficulty that may stay through the upcoming remake. The real difficulty behind Persona 1 came from the sheer numbers of opponents that needed to be faced, particularly in later dungeons. Players found themselves grinding more than they do in most RPGs. However, there are some points that help with this, such as the overall game not being as long as some of the massive later entries in the franchise. At number 5, we've got Kingsfield. It's surprising to find that one of the toughest challenges in any PlayStation RPG came from a team that would go on to create the Dark Souls franchise. From Software's debut video game, Kingsfield was a challenging early version of the 3D RPG console game. Although development began for PC, the From Software team decided to move to PlayStation instead. Kingsfield sets players inside a dungeon filled with monsters and tasks them with finding the dark door that is being used to fill the kingdom with great evil. While there is a fair amount of lore behind this dark adventure, Kingsfield doesn't hugely resemble the later From Software games, except perhaps in the difficulty category. At number 4, we've got Chrono Cross. A similar game set in a similar world to Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross was released in 1999 and became a much beloved, though difficult, JRPG. The main character, Serge, accidentally travels to a parallel dimension where he died 10 years earlier, leading to a much changed world now. The story of Chrono Cross may be complex, especially for its time, but the difficulty is even more so. Without the traditional leveling system of an RPG, Chrono Cross forces players to utilize a lot more strategy with their party in combat. Players can certainly beat the game, but it will be shocking for players to revisit the original version due to the differences between Chrono Cross and many modern RPGs. At number 3, we've got Dragon Quest VII. The Dragon Quest franchise is one of the most long-running JRPG franchises in the history of gaming, shown by the fact that the 7th entry came out in 2000 for the PlayStation 1. Between the giant open world, which takes hundreds of hours to navigate even without completing any side quests, and the huge difficulty of the turn-based combat, Dragon Quest VII is on another level even for this franchise. The plot involves the unnamed protagonist going back in time to save various continents, so they still exist in the modern world, which previously only consisted of one small remaining island. This leads to a massive world opening up over the course of the game, with many players never managing to complete Dragon Quest VII as a result. At number 2, we've got Alundra. Alundra was originally released in 1997 and focused on another silent protagonist. It featured Alundra journeying to a village plagued by nightmares, where he discovers his power as a dreamwalker. Going between the dreams of the villagers, Alundra works against a demonic force to save the village. Alundra is a beautiful throwback sort of game, which has never been updated, and players today still struggle with the incredible puzzles that are found throughout it. Alundra has been praised for decades, mostly because of the various difficult, well-thought-out puzzles involved in progressing through the game. And coming in at number 1, we've got SaGa Frontier. SaGa Frontier is a fascinating game and is part of an incredibly difficult franchise, which allows players to choose from 7 potential protagonists at the beginning of the game. What makes SaGa Frontier unique compared to other RPGs is that each of these 7 characters has their own completely different storyline. Set in a group of planets called the Regions, players can adventure across the system and run into parts of other characters' storylines. While the game gets easier with each character's story being completed, at the beginning and throughout as players learn the difficult controls and deal with the hard combat, they will be challenged like few PlayStation 1 games ever managed. And there you have it, folks, 7 of the hardest PlayStation 1 RPGs ever made. Let us know in the comments if you've played one of these games or if you have an RPG of your own that you consider to be the hardest. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, be sure to visit GameRant.com for more top-notch gaming content. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care for now.